Hi everyone, and welcome to this episode of the iOS Lead Essentials podcast. Here we discuss the strategies in your journey to become a complete senior iOS developer. My name is Bogdan, I'm a senior iOS developer and lead instructor in the iOS Lead Essentials program, the online training program for iOS developers who want to become complete senior developers. Today our special guest is Dan, a developer from Venezuela that's living in Argentina and a senior iOS developer and student of the iOS Lead Essentials program. Hi, Dan, and welcome.
Hello, Bogdan. Nice to be here. Very glad to be here.
So, okay, for people watching, can you tell us what are some of your achievements with the program that we'll be going into detail today?
Okay, so one of the things that I loved about uh, the achievements that I did not so long ago actually was to have a 70% faster build times, which was amazing in terms of the team and the business, you know, and also an approximately 60% increase of salary when I started to apply these things a couple of years ago. I didn't even finish the program actually, so I already saw, yeah, I already saw the value that this program actually gave you. So yeah, I'm as you said, senior iOS developer. I am also a lead iOS as well, and yeah, please,
Awesome, Dan. Congratulations.
thank you.
And I know you're one of the active members of our community, sharing those achievements
Yeah.
here and there, and it's motivating a lot of the other students to do the same, right? To try to bring value in different parts of the business as well as on the technical side.
Correct.
So for you that are watching, just stay until the end to learn how Dan did it. Maybe he has a secret, and you can achieve it too. Our goal is to find replicable steps that others can follow to achieve the same. So then, let's talk about your career. How long have you been an iOS developer? How you started with iOS?
Right. So I started programming in 2008 actually, and started programming in iOS in 2015. So yeah, I had like 6 years of experience. I thought that I was senior. I wasn't at all because there were so many problems at the time. There were like Viper, Clean Swift that were coming up in the community, and I you just follow this kind of architecture coaching because they are just basically design patterns that help you to resolve your UI. But at the same time, I didn't know where to go. I mean, I had nobody in my family or friends were informatics, so or engineers or even peers. Didn't know the way to do really scalable, maintainable applications in iOS.
Right. And how'd you actually start with iOS?
So basically, that was a funny story because I wanted to create an application that lets you create playlists, music playlist with a bunch of friends. And basically, I wanted to start with Android, and the company that I started with, I was yeah, uh, they said, "Hey, I know this is backend for iOS. I know this is that like quoting dark side of but it isn't dark side." And then I took it, and basically, it stuck with me. It
Yeah.
has a lot of things, great things that you can see when you program.
Yeah. I've actually spoke to many developers on the podcast and outside, and uh, I see this common theme where they kind of went into iOS with a, I don't know, let's see mindset, and years later they was still doing iOS. It kind of grew on them, and
Hmm.
they didn't expect it at that time, myself included. So it's interesting to see this pattern um, on many developers.
Yeah, I totally
Cool.
agree.
Cool. So now that you're doing development for more than 8 years, and like you said, I really relate to that point where you said you thought you were a senior and then discovered some new areas to improve. I remember the exact point where I felt the same. Like I was
Hmm.
too confident, and then got exposed to the content from the essential developer program, and like changed the way I see certain things for
Yeah.
sure. So it was eye-opening, but also an opportunity to get back to hard work and
Yeah.
filling the gap. So, like I said, now that you've been in the industry for these years already, do you have like a more longer term goal where you see yourself doing something?
Yeah. So basically, my first goal was to be a master in programming overall, like uh, because I needed to find the goal. It's for the sake of experimenting with the technologies. You can do Ruby, JavaScript, Java, C Sharp, and Swift, whatever, and even doing IoT things. But then you will end up wasting time in terms of overall. That's a good thing, because you can see a general thing about things. But if you want to become really specialist in one thing, then you have to, well, I had to, create this goal in terms of general goal uh, to become master of programming. And that's when I decided to be more disciplined, more uh, accurate in terms of finding my time to learn from the best. And at the same time, at that time when I was looking for um, a knowledge or mentors, right? um,
Right.
I was struggling, and I will argue with this, argument, sorry, more in terms of my struggles at that time. I didn't find a way to, do a scalable and a stable uh, code with legacy code or even features. So I also struggled with creating functional teams or finding them. Actually, I didn't know even what it's like to have functional teams or even code that is stable, maintainable, and applying TDD all the way. Um, so uh, at that time, I had a very heated discussions with one of my leaders because I knew that there was problems in the code, right? I knew this, and we weren't able to be a company or a product that can be receiving features on demand, or doing this kind of stuff that can be you can create an application that is scalable. So, and at the same time, there were MVP and the clean Swift and this kind of coding design, coding architectures, which are, like I mentioned, the design patterns that help you with the UI. And I found a YouTube video from the session developer, which is the MVC. What is MVC, MVP, and what are the
Right.
problems? And then you cannot do networking or caching or storing in the controller, for example, or in the presentation layer, right? Every single of one of them resolve one thing, in the structure to handle the UI. So that idea stuck with me, that the model, it's a huge and more amount of code or more components involved than just a coding model, right? And so I kept on learning about them, and I didn't have the money at the time. I kept saving, and then I decided to join, and it was
Right.
amazing. Yeah.
Nice. Nice. So, yeah, I first want to touch upon the goal that you set. I think that's for a driven person, it's very concrete. So to say like master of programming, I know it sounds a bit, maybe a bit too
General or
cheesy or something like that,
easy.
but it's true. Like, yeah, I mean, if you really want to be super proficient, if you want to be a complete developer, you
Yes.
have to have something like that in mind. And just putting a name on it, I think it's very important. So now you know, okay, where I'm gonna get is this,
Hmm.
right? And you can maybe measure it in some way, or just by asking the question, am I at the point where I can say I'm a master of programming? No. Okay, what's the next step? What do I need to acquire to get there? And there are
Correct.
different techniques, different pieces of information to study, to learn, to practice, stuff like that. But it's good to have that overall picture. And I really like that you have that. I think it's unique to individuals that are super driven, that they want to achieve that, and they kind of, let's say, put it on the wall. It's like, this is what I want. So now it becomes just a matter of decomposing into small steps, right? Seeing what you need to do to get there.
Yeah,
So
correct. And basically with this goal, you can actually be motivated every time because the matter of fact is that we are humans, right? We don't have the same motivation every day. And then
yeah,
you can decide why it's 6 a.m. in the morning, I have to get up, right? And why do I have to get up, right? I want to become a master of programming. Okay, then I schedule my day or even schedule the week
yeah,
earlier in the and that helps you so much because
yeah,
uh, you find yourself, watching a movie or watching a series, and well, you don't like the movie, right? You could, just keep 1 hour or 1 hour and a half studying one thing or practicing. Hey, how do I had this problem in my team or in my company. How do I can get to a resolution for this? And you can have single steps, but at the same time you have the same goal. This goal that is almost unreachable, but at the same time it keeps you motivated.
yeah. That's it. And just to, I would comment on what you said about having that schedule, the reason why, let's say, you wake up, you have stuff to do. I would use that where I would ask myself, let's say I want to become a master of programming like you're going. I would ask myself, how would the day of a master of programming look like? What
Mm.
would a master do? How many hours per day would he study? Would he, whatever other things in the agenda? And try to have that mentality. It's similar
Yep.
to, let's say, if you want to lose 20 kilos, right? Go on a being more healthy initiative, right? So instead of
Hmm.
trying to think like the old person, you try to think, okay, how would a super fit and healthy person structure their day? And it's similar, and you know the answers. You kind of already feel them. So it's just switching the way you put the question. So I super agree with all you said. And yeah, I mean, it comes down to, of course, all the peoples have goals, right? All the people. I
Yeah.
think somebody said like in sports, all the athletes want to get number one place, right? First place. It's not a problem of who sets the best goal, is who manages to achieve the goal, because only one can, right? In a sporting
That's a
event.
very good
So
example.
it's a it's how do you do it, how do you do a tiny step each day towards the goal once you have it. And I think that's where people
Correct.
struggle the most. Is, of course, everybody wants to be a super class developer and earn a lot of money and get the best jobs, and like but how do you do it?
Correct.
How do you get there? They don't want to
Exactly.
ask that question. I think because the answer is sometimes is you're not gonna like the answer, right? You're gonna have to do stuff. I
Yes.
remember Caio said this in maybe it was mentoring, like remembering a Sunday where he had to work on some new skill and all his friends were out. It was a nice weather. They were having
Mm.
fun and he was at home because he had a goal, and he had to decide at that point like, okay, this doesn't work with my goal. I will have to make the decision. I either want my goal to happen or I go out and have fun today, tomorrow, and the next day, and so on. So it's really I think a lot of the times there's people would dream about something but not want to do what is necessary to get there. And of course, I don't want to get too philosophical about it, but it's nice to have the goal and see the path, right? And make
Yes.
adjustments and all that stuff. So
Yeah, because basically what I found is that there's so much uh, and information out there. There's so many networks. Everyone can be, have the reason, right? But at the same time, what I found is that okay, my measurement of that reason or that knowledge to be applied is that if it gives you results or not. And from the first video that I had with that I saw in the YouTube channel with the essential developer talking about the MVC, MVP, and all these separating concerns and what you should, be aware of, that's valuable. And that right there gives you so much of possibilities, right?
yeah,
And you can also apply that information. And every single, free content in the YouTube channel will give you more insights, more insights, more insights. And then you will ask yourself, okay, I totally understand the problems. I agree with you. It does make sense, but how do I do it in iOS, right? And that's where, this program is there for. And it explains you everything, the mindset, the schedule, the requirements, all the way from you will see networking, persistence, composition UI. You will go through unit testing, um, integration test, end-to-end test, acceptance test, snapshot testing. It's amazing. I mean, I know it sounds like impossible, but it does. It is possible. It is. It is not easy. I will have to say. I finished the program in a 1 year time, but I wanted to understand how how the how to approach problems, how to think about it, how to reasoning and use the tools instead of the tools using you. Because what normally happens is that you will use, like for example, Viper, but then everything has to match a component like interactors, routers, right? And
yeah, that's
at the
it.
same time, at the same time, when you want to add a feature, then everything breaks, right? From the compiling time, uh, from the builds, to the features, and then you cannot add features or remove features or even modify them because it is so complex. Everything breaks, and that's when the issues come along. And this program will teach you how to resolve that kind of stuff, that kind of problems with architecture in mind, with reasoning in mind, with the tools right to the problem in the time, the moment.
Yeah, and especially what you said, like avoiding the templates, avoiding fitting everything in. I remember
Yes.
half of the conversations we had on a particular project where we used Viper was, does this fit into the interactor or the presenter? There was no, like, nobody could imagine extracting another component that wasn't an interactor, a presenter, or router, or entity, right? It doesn't fit into Viper anymore. So that was
Totally.
the discussion. Like maybe it fits better into interactor. So
Maybe.
of course caching and networking and notifications and everything was in the interactor. Right? So
Terrible.
yeah, it's terrible because I mean it works for some cases. That's one of the lessons I learned. Just avoid putting like an etiquette, like a label on something that is good or bad. It really depends on the situation at hand and the level of the team and the requirements they have, the way the business works, how flexible it needs to be, and all that stuff. But
Hmm.
overall, you can perhaps say a solution is maybe more optimal than another or something like that, or fits better the domain. So,
Yep. It's a
so
tool,
yeah,
so you would use the tool
yeah,
in
that's
that
it.
sense, right? I
That's
mean,
it.
so that's the problem. You have many possibilities how to use that tool in order to resolve the problem in the first place. And also, I have to say that The requirements are very important as well. So basically, we can talk about it later on, but if you don't keep in mind that you are doing stuff for the business, then we'll just do great architectures, or applying these templates either way. But at the same time, if you don't give value to the business, then uh, that's not
That's
uh,
it. Because let's
that's
not
important.
forget the architecture is there to solve the business problem. That's
That's
the main
exactly.
goal, right?
Yes,
It's not
correct.
to look pretty on a piece of paper. It's
Exactly.
to solve the problem. So it really depends on the situation, right? But yeah, I think it's really important to just try to think about all the all the situation you're in, right, and make the decision that fits you best. And I really like your analogy with tools. I all these things you mentioned are tools, right? All the techniques, TDD testing, and different types of testing. So
Mhm.
unit testing, integration testing, you mentioned acceptance testing, snapshot testing. It's not one is better than the other. Which one is best? No, it's like different tools. I'm gonna use all of them to complement each other, to help each other. The same with architectures. Like I don't need to be like, no, my app is fully MVVM. Nobody cares about that. It's about, does it allow you to make easy adjustments? Is it testable? Is it easy to compile in note to
Yes.
the improvement of build times you mentioned in the beginning, right? Does it help build times and all these metrics if you want? So if you start thinking techniques, start seeing techniques and principles like tools, then you would have more control because then you're not married to any one of them. You just use
Correct.
whatever you need in different scenarios, different projects, different places of the same code base. You can use a different solution just because it fits best there. That no problem. To summarize, what would you say were the biggest struggles you had when you found about the program and wanted to, I don't know, fix these or get into a better shape? You mentioned not knowing or not finding the functional teams. What else? What would you mention?
So you mean before I joined the program,
Yeah,
or
before.
okay? So yeah. So also in that sense, when I was having this heated discussion with one of my team leaders, because I wanted to have so much emphasis on good software, but at the same time, I didn't know how to do a scalable and stable legacy code, because legacy code is without tests, right? It's code without
Yeah.
tests, but at the same in this industry, we just call it like old code, right? But what it differentiates between the words to understand whether this code is maintainable in the kind of sense and testable. And I didn't know how to do that in a code that is hasn't this testing. And I had to know about a lot of things, right? Uh, Starting with dependency injection, right? And understanding how to decouple the things, and how to follow a requirement first, and then from the requirement do this testing, and go all the way down, say, to the infrastructure. Like I want to load some items, and then I have to understand that there is an abstraction between them, so I can compose every single component that I want, or every single feature that I want. For example, I can do caching, I can do networking, I can use core data one day, and tomorrow we'll do realm, right? This kind of stuff. I didn't understand anything about it. I didn't even know how to think, right? How to reason. So I
Yeah.
had to unlearn what I learned for the past 6 years, right? And from all the uni, right? Because in the university, you learn about this stuff, but not deeply, no, not even in iOS. So that's two problems that you have there. I mean, yeah, they mention it, they teach you a little bit, but they don't go too deep on it, and they don't, as I said, apply it in iOS. With this program, I found a way to not only applying the correct theory and the correct reasoning, but also to apply in iOS, which was amazing.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's an interesting thing you mentioned about uni. I m- perhaps because of the timing, I went to uni a bit earlier, and since I'm a bit older, and it was a
Totally.
different experience. So for me, it was like this. I had these old professors that would all argue about principles, ways to write clean code, these things, and I kind of didn't pay much attention then. I maybe didn't get all the subtle info they shared. And then I remember my colleagues, all the colleagues from work that said, "Oh, but you don't need to care about that because now we have frameworks. And frameworks take care of everything for you. Like, you don't care about that. Like, that's stupid. Or, no, we have frameworks now. And it's like in Java and in .NET, and we have all these frameworks which are easy to set up, and you can do whatever you want. So you don't have to care about those are like non-applicable um, pieces. Right? So okay, now I need to
So
learn the
those are
frameworks.
the things that
And I spent a lot of time trying to learn the frameworks, and then I realized, but man, I'm learning all these frameworks, and in 2 years, 3 years, the framework is gone, and now there's a new framework which I need to learn. Like, this is stupid. Like, uh, how do you do
deprecated all the
this?
way.
Yeah, you're always deprecated. That was it, and especially with bigger projects, with those technologies I mentioned, they have a much slower turnaround than iOS. In iOS, it's like a smaller app usually, so it's easier to refactor. So you hear this all the time, like we need to rewrite everything in Swift UI because now Swift UI is there and it's better than UI Kit. And people just don't take the time to analyze that statement. They just take it like it's a, I don't
It's
know,
like a
quote from the
normal thing.
Bible. Yeah, it's no, it's like undeniable. No, that definitely
Wow.
Swift UI is better than UI Kit. Like, and then okay, we need to rewrite everything. So I I was maybe in that situation for a while. So it was funny until it clicked that okay, maybe I'm something is wrong here with all these
See?
frameworks. Okay, so how would you say your career was going before you decided to join the program?
Okay, it was going to a plateau. Like I mentioned, I didn't know how to, because I thought that I knew how to program, but at the same time, I didn't know how to scale, how to
Right,
test,
right,
how to modularize the components, how to give this thing the kind of sense of everything that you do in code is because of a reason, and it's not because of no. Look at how how good is my code, how
right,
clean it is, right? It's
right.
about resolving one problem, which is the business itself. Or either it's a business or even a pet project. Why not?
Yeah.
I mean, or
But
maybe you have an idea.
would
Yeah.
you say not having this knowledge was limiting your career growth?
Yes.
Uh, okay.
I was learning from various books, but because I didn't have a person that said that mentioned where to look at or what book to read, and then I was finding myself, reading books, just um, learning as I go. But at the same time, I knew that this path will take me too much time because you have to learn, practice, apply one thing that you don't know if it works or not. So when you actually realize that there is a problem, that you have to, add another book and then add another book, right? At the same time, if you have all this knowledge just very well structured, step by step, then it's like a highway,
Yeah.
right? You don't have to go, uh, finding yourself, finding the way, but you just have to, hit the gas and keep going, and that's
Yeah.
it. That's
Repetition.
amazing. Repetition, right?
Yeah.
And even and when you learn, practice, and execute everything that you learn, and this is something that you learn in the program, you will find that it brings you value every single step. That's why I was, applying the first module, and then I found, hey, I had too many regressions because I didn't apply TDD, but I applied modular design, and then I understood why TDD is important.
To me, that's the biggest issue is when you test after, the code is not that testable. You don't have the right way to sense the changes in the code, the changes in
Good.
behavior. So then you kind of start to fit testing into a semi-testable component, right? And
Good.
you couple your tests with the specifics instead of just like we mentioned in the beginning, testing the behavior.
The
And by
behavior.
testing the behavior, what's the advantage, you may ask, is to, like, now I can refactor my production code and the test won't break, because if I keep the exact same behavior, then my test
Correct.
works. And you can, I think you can only get that if you test drive.
Right.
You can't do it otherwise, because you this testing is such a complex thing, and just being able to sense the effects, especially with side effects, right? That unless you design it for it, it's not gonna work. Like you cannot have that mind where you keep so many things going on at the same time. And think about testing as well: architecture, separation of concerns, abstractions, and at the same time think about testability. Like, can I sense this here? Do I need something else? Like, do I need to do a slight modification? So it can still work. I've worked on projects where we've done testing after writing the production code, and it still worked to some degree, but that final touch wasn't there, like the testability, the real testability. So we would struggle, or we would couple the tests with the production.
And that's the when I figured out that I had to, finish the program, understand everything. You can apply it little by little, but then you will end up by, okay, then I have this and this problems, but then I don't know this and that. How can I do this, right? In terms of, how to apply these things in networking or the persistence, how to couple of compose all of them, right?
Right.
And then I had to, figure out everything. And the funny thing about it is that when I totally understood how to apply TDD and a couple things, then I was applying design patterns. This was very, very, very interesting thing, because I found myself that I was, doing this everything good. I mean, well, coding. I mean, at least, but the things that I can reach to. And the problem was that I was taking too long to develop, right? And then the composition module teach me how to use universal abstraction to resolve the design patterns that I had to that I had applied. And then productivity went up like really good, and
Yeah.
it makes sense to apply these things not only to the sake of maintainability or flexibility to the business, but actually also speed, right? And these are things that I had to learn as I went through the program.
Right.
That was amazing. That was very, very every
Cool.
single module, every single lesson. It's so much. It brings you so too much value.
Yeah, I agree. So on that note, how do you actually decide to join?
Basically, when I saw that it's not only about learning from the YouTube channels, or even the things that the values that the Caio Mike follow, or the session developer as a whole follows, I needed to understand how to do in iOS step by step. You also have this free content where they create or develop an application from the scratch actually with TDD and all these things in mind. But I needed to understand more, and I wanted to have the ability to do it in every single code, not only legacy or from the scratch, but
Right.
or not only from the scratch, but in legacy codes as well. And one of the things that I really liked is the community. You will learn so much with
Yeah.
this kind of community, because imagine all the possibilities, all the questions that you might have, but you haven't had yet, but somebody else did. And then you have it right there in the knowledge base.
Yeah.
And the last product that they created, which you can search for every content in the academy, not only in the Slack, but also in the lesson. So you have an idea, you have a problem, then you can go to the knowledge base and they just search for it. And after you, of course, you finish the program. That's
Yeah.
so good.
There's
It's
a lot
like,
of knowledge there.
yeah, yeah,
Awesome.
yeah.
So you decided to join. Did you have any second thoughts?
Nope.
No, I guess so.
I
Me
mean,
neither.
I mean, everything from the second module, I increased my salary for like for X3, right? For
Wow.
3 times. Yeah, that was amazing because yeah, it's very good. Ever since I've been following the program and still getting more and more
Right.
increased ever since. But more about the money is about the knowledge and the power that you have to resolve problems, and
I
that's
agree.
amazing.
I agree.
And you earn it. It's not about only the program, but you have to earn it. You have to keep yourself, doing stuff, discipline with discipline, consistency, and every single day. It is hard. It's not easy. I had to take 1 year to resolve this kind of stuff, but you know,
And the money follows, right? The money follows naturally. You don't have to follow the money. That's it.
yes, correct.
Awesome.
That's
So
correct.
to get more practical, how'd you said you took like 1 year to finish the program. How was that like? How'd you study? How'd you practice? Just tell me a bit about that, your process to absorbing the knowledge.
It was it was trial and error because I needed to have this mindset of, it is hard, but it is achievable. But in terms of how, I watched as I mentioned, not only discipline and consistency and have this goal, also follow a schedule that you actually follow it. It's not about, just putting blocks in your calendar, but actually follow them. One of the things that I also add is about per week, I made a goal. Like for example, I have to learn this number of lessons, for example. And how that I did it, I watched the video first, and do exactly what they do in the code, not wasting time in trying to figure out how to do it by myself, but rather just follow them and understand their reasoning while you're doing it. Read the notes that every lesson has, read the comments as well, rewatch the video, taking notes. I apply mind maps, my maps.
Yeah.
To me, it's a very, very nice way of, gathering information and just look for a single point or theory really quickly, because you can have all these lesson in one place. You don't have to, scroll to it and as you go through, and also resolve any questions in Slack. So that's the way I did it. Of course, was just a year's time that I had to really, learn this thing little by little. And the last 2 months, I just did the last two modules really quickly because of it.
Right.
Also, learn, practice, and apply, like they say.
Nice. And what about the other? Because two measurable achievements stuck with me from the beginning. One was the tests, adding tests to a legacy code base, and the other was reducing the build time from, I think it was 70, 60
Mhm.
minutes something
No,
like that.
45, like 40,
45.
40, 40,
Oh, okay. Okay.
45
So S to like
to
10.
10
Okay.
minutes. And this is because the Xcode project, the iOS project was using a lot of dependencies, right? That it didn't need. Like, for example, we're just using Google Analytics, but then the team decided to add bunch of Google frameworks, for example, and not only that, but everything was so coupled that
Yeah.
the compiler couldn't like do parallelized builds or
Yeah.
compiling, right? So that's basically what I did to
Yeah.
decouple all the things that I needed, right? Or has a go, because the problem was that because everything was so coupled and you had massive B controllers, then I had to do some work before even testing, and as I go testing, you can separate the concerns and then
Yeah.
let Xcode to compile things separately, right, in parallel. So
Right.
that's amazing, and I didn't understood this, and that's why I took the one of the additional courses, the tooling courses, like that actually you give, and you gave.
Yeah.
So basically, that was that was very very amazing to
Yeah,
learn.
it is to see these improvements. And how long did it take to get there? I know it's a kind of an accumulation because I mean you have to learn some things before you can actually improve your build times. It's not like you can go in tomorrow and you improve your build time. Like build times are something that require more under the hood skills. But just curious, how long did it take to I don't know learn those things, try it out, and see these improvements?
So I follow the program or the code. The course has it started. So before I joined the project or the company that I am talking about, I already had a knowledge about how to see what to see in order to resolve it. So my approach was in the implementations in itself was a couple of weeks or 3 weeks or something like that.
Nice.
Yes, it was pretty fast because of I knew how to do it. I knew what to look for. I knew how to apply it in that sense. But of course,
Right.
you reduce the build times, right? And then as you program, it will change. It's not something static, right?
Yeah.
But what I meant to is to uh, keep an eye on also the build times always.
Yeah. Yeah. On that note, I remember one of the huge projects I worked on. We had a separate machine that was tracking build times. So you had like a graph of build times over time.
Mm.
And somebody, of course, with the team, like I think at some point we were 40 plus iOS developers. You had to you had to
Wow.
look at build times from like a measurable point of view.
Mm.
So yeah,
Yeah.
that was interesting. Um, but yeah, again, very nice results, and I would like to flip this and actually look at your situation the other way around. So I would say look at what happens to a project that requires 10 minutes to build. You
Mhm.
can you can make it into a 45-minute build if you just do the right mistakes. If I put it like that. So it's a huge difference. You might not think it is, but it is definitely a higher cost in
Mm.
the CI, because CI time
Yes.
really costs money nowadays. Um, and also with like any change, any iteration you need to do in your team, not to mention test driven development, right? Because it kind of makes it impossible. I know we're talking about um, clean build time, not incremental ones. I would
Mhm.
assume, because
Yeah,
if
exactly.
an incremental build takes 45 minutes, that you're it's insane. But even so, it's very hard for the developers to really get into a flow, to really feel the
Yes.
changes they make. And I remember whenever I worked on projects that have like a, let's say, a bad setup like this, where the build was taking a long time, it was very hard to focus on one idea, because you do something and you start the build and it kind of, if it takes more than 5 minutes, you lose the flow. You do something else in between, then it's hard to get back to the same, um, I don't know, thinking
You lose
process.
the
So
idea, yes.
yeah, you
Yeah,
lose your idea, you lose the flow. It's very hard. It's very unproductive in my opinion. So just, yeah, try to, I would try to optimize that as early as possible. So the smaller the build
exactly.
times, and like you said, if you need split into separate components, separate modules that you can build faster, it gives you a lot of, I
Yeah,
don't know, improves your overall performance as
yeah.
a developer. Can you tell me what the your main takeaways are from the program, like things that really stuck with you?
There's a bunch of things. But one of the things that I really liked is about how to think about one problem in terms of code. That's what I really liked about everything, actually, because TDD, CI/CD, solid design patterns, universal abstractions, and all the kind of stuff. Oh, the testing and all the things that you should be aware of. But even Xcode, um, build settings, and that kind of stuff, that's cool enough. But they're all tools. That what stuck with me beyond that is the reason, how to reason about things, how to understand the problem in the first place, and how to take small steps towards a solution and resolve little by little. Because it's not about only to have the perfect solution, but at least you can go towards a perfect solution. So you can go and bring value little by little. So uh, I think that's one of the things that I really loved about the program. How to
Awesome.
reason. Yes.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's one of these cases where somebody tells you, Stop applying, start thinking." And when you do that, it's amazing how it changes your perspective. You no longer try to follow everything. You no longer try to fit into a pattern like we discussed initially. Uh, it
Yeah.
it just gives you responsibility and power. So you start to think, okay, was the problem? Was the requirement here? What should I do? What are the pros and cons of taking whatever options I have? And it's yeah, I think it makes all the difference. Like that's the thing that takes you to the next level. Just being aware. Now I'm choosing this. There's an intention. There's not just following
Mhm.
blindly something.
Or
Uh,
community, or an article. Just no, it's
yeah,
about. I really like what you mentioned. So about responsibility and intention, like taking a decision, and if it goes wrong, then you will be there to fix it, right? It's not about
yeah,
the first time you decide one thing and that everything is uh, good, but it's about an evolutive a process, little by little, go to the better scenarios and better product. Say, yeah, I really
yeah,
like that
yeah,
responsibility.
yeah.
Yeah, that's good.
Other main takeaways, like something that really stuck with you?
Okay, yeah,
Because I know you have a lot, but maybe like the
yeah, yeah. That is a huge amount of things that I learned uh, across. Right. Let's just pick one then. So well, yeah, one of the things that I really liked about the program is that, uh, when before I joined the program, I didn't know what a functional team looked like, or a a very stable code and maintainable code on the streets in iOS was like. And not only that, but people that think exactly like you, that feel exactly the same things that you see in the industry, that totally blew my mind because now I have a long-lasting academy and a long-lasting community that I can, it's ev- we are from every single part of the world, and I
Yeah.
can just connect with them. Hey, I'm gonna visit you, right? Hey, let's go to a conference together. Why not? I mean, that kind of power. And everything is, we share the same knowledge, the same things. We ask us ourselves if this is the truth, or not the truth, but if this is something that you actually that actually works, and that you can actually apply to your problem, right? Every single time we think about ourselves this. And yeah, having this community is amazing. They really learned about not only the Slack threads, the questions, but also the mentoring sessions. Mentoring
Yeah.
sessions are very, very good. I'll
Yeah.
say that. Uh, yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And they keep making them. So it's amazing. I mean, the proof is right here with our global community. Is we have a developer from Argentina talking to another fellow developer from Romania. So this is what our community does. It just bridges
Yeah,
these gaps. And
yeah,
yeah, I mean, it's amazing, and to me as well, being part of this community I feel it makes me better every day. Like every day, I read something, I participate in some conversation. There are often times where I'm like, it, I didn't
I
know you
didn't
could
thought
do
about this,
that.
right?
Yeah, yeah, or I didn't see this angle, this problem, this scenario. Like, yeah, it's very, very powerful, I think. Yeah. So cool to all these people and to other people, to the future uh, students. Any advice then the developer would give? Like what was really instrumental to your growth as an individual, as a developer?
So basically, what I would just my main advice, if I can give you one, uh, have a goal first and follow it. Don't um, don't give up. That would say, think of it as you win or you learn. That one of the things that I learned also from the program, and because sometimes these things can be overwhelming, but it only um, it is only important if you want it to be important. So you can use it, right? Towards your goal. So find your goal and stick to it, and you will find yourself resolving problems uh, little by little. Yes.
Awesome. I really like it, and I would just add that don't be scared if it sounds cheesy. It's fine. It's your goal, and just fight for. I mean, if it's the best
Correct.
one you can come up with, just
Yes.
yeah, know what it
Yes.
is and work every
It is.
day.
It is personal. Okay, so
Yeah,
it
yeah,
doesn't matter if if it's for you. It's not for your friends or your family. It's for you
yeah,
only, and you can use it as you can mention it to others, but you also can mention it to yourself. And what matters here is yourself. So it doesn't matter if it sounds cheesy. It doesn't matter
yeah.
if you find it value to the goal.
That's it. Okay. So if anyone wants to contact you, like a company or somebody that wants to get in touch, like how can they find you?
So you can search me in LinkedIn, Dan Torres, and also have my own blog, danieltorresblog.com,
Nice.
and they all have my contacts there.
Awesome. So then I really appreciate. It was a very insightful conversation. I think I learned a lot
Yeah, me
here.
too. Yeah, me too.
Thanks
Me too.
for
Thank
thanks
you.
for being available, for coming to the podcast. I'm
It was a
sure
pleasure. It was an honor. as well.
Same
Yeah.
here. I'm sure people will, like developers will find parts that they can apply to their own careers, their own situations. So awesome.
Yeah. Thank you for having me.
Sure.
It was a pleasure.
Same, same
Uh,
here. And keep in touch.
all right.
And
Yeah.
for the people watching, if you want to learn more, just visit us at essentialdeveloper.com. And there you can find a bunch of free resources to improve your iOS dev skills. And also, we're available on the social channels, YouTube, Twitter, and so on. Thanks, and see you soon.